Grandma here reading Dave at Night, chapter 35. Dave has made it back safely, having eaten at Ermeline's home with Mrs. Packer. He has now found out that she doesn't want him living in his basement. Mr. Doom didn't leave his door unlocked the next day, and the maid didn't clean. But he did the day after, Wednesday. From the top of the marble stairs in the lobby, I watched him leave without locking up. According to Louis and Danny, the maid came right away after Mr. Doom left, and it took her about 10 minutes to clean. Then he came back 15 minutes or so after she finished, but they were just guessing because neither of them had a watch. I started counting seconds as soon as he closed the door. It was easy. I just kept track of my heart pounding. Blam 1, blam 2, blam 300, 5 minutes, and the maid still hadn't come. By now, I could have opened the cabinet, gotten the carving, and been out of there. Blam 600, and she still hadn't come. Blam 648, and the maid came out of the stairwell carrying a feather duster and pulling a hoover. She strolled toward Mr. Doom's office, taking her own sweet time. She opened the door, went inside, and I started counting again. If she took a whole 10 minutes, I'd only have 5 before Mr. Doom came back, and I didn't know if that was enough. She was out when I got to 385, about 6 minutes. I started down the stairs, still counting. A prefect opened the door from one of the stairwells. I froze. He went into the side hallway. He'd stopped me for 25 seconds. I had 8 minutes left. I could probably do it twice in 8 minutes. I continued down the stairs, starting a new count. Blam 1, blam 2. Don't let anybody come into the HHB. Don't let anybody come through the hall. Nobody did. I opened the door to the office and closed it behind me fast. Blam 18. I smelled furniture polish. Blam 21. My hand was shaking so bad I couldn't get the key into the lock. And then I dropped it. Blam 25. Don't rush. You're making it worse. Take a deep breath. Try again. Blam 29. I heard footsteps. I dove for the knee hole of the desk. The footsteps got louder, passed the door, and got softer. I'd lost count of the seconds. The key went in. I tried to turn it. It wouldn't turn. Was it the wrong key? I jiggled it. The lock moved. It was the right key. I pulled the door, stuck for a second, then opened. The glass rattled. More footsteps. I took out the carving. I touched Papa. I moved a china donkey, a bowl of seashells, and a wooden box to fill in the empty space on the shelf. Now I just put the key back in the desk. The door opened. Mr. Doom. Wahoo! He roared. He blocked the door. Black shape in the doorway, light around him. He wasn't getting this carving back. I hugged her to my chest. He was going to beat me again. I rushed at him, jumped, leaped, reached up, threw his specs glasses over my shoulder, threw the key, had to get out. He was yelling, words, sounds. Where? You won't, can't see, just let me. I dodged him. His arms were going up, down, sideways, hunting. I sprang back. He wouldn't get out of my way. Between his legs, I was a bullet, a cannonball. I hurtled through. He shouted, grabbed. He had my foot. I pulled, kept going. I was through. He had my shoe. People running, Mr. Meltzer, other prefects, boys. I shot across the lobby. A boy opened the front door for me, older, not an 11. He had green eyes. Funny how I noticed. I was outside. It was raining, sleeting. I ran through the gate and kept going. My shoeless foot, cold. Ran toward Broadway, stepped on something sharp. Ouch. Kept running. 3 prefects, Mr. Meltzer behind me, half a block. Mr. Meltzer catching up, out of breath, a quarter block. Broadway, people, peddler's cart, laundry wagon, taxi, trolley at a stop. Trolley! People getting on. Mr. Meltzer at the corner. I ran into the street. One more to get on. I stood behind the trolley. Hurry up, mister. Get on. He did. Start, start. The trolley moved. I jumped onto the back bumper, almost dropped the carving. Goodbye, Mr. Meltzer. I hung on to the back of the trolley window with my right hand, clutched the carving with the other. My teeth were chattering. I didn't have a cent. My money was back at the HHB. The trolley was headed downtown. Where could I go? Nowhere. It was a laugh. When I wanted to run away, I had to stay, and when I wanted to stay, I had to go. I looked down at the carving, at Papa and Mama and Gideon and me waiting on line to get on the ark. The family we should have been. The trolley lurched and I held on with both hands, the carving between my elbow and my chest. Then the trolley steadied and I looked at the bottom of my shoeless foot to see if I'd cut it. Miraculously, no blood was seeping through the sock. The trolley stopped. The conductor was getting out to chase me. I jumped off into a freezing puddle and ran. I was safe from Mr. Doom, and I had the carving, but I'd never see my buddies again. It took over 4 hours to reach my old neighborhood. After the first trolley, I jumped on anything I could, mostly trolleys, and stayed on till the driver chased me off. If a furniture truck driver hadn't let me ride inside with him from the 60th Street to Houston Street, I might have frozen to death. I had decided to go to Aunt Sarah and Aunt Lily's. As soon as the truck driver dropped me off, I knew I was home. I could have been blind and I would have known. It was the stink, garbage and crap, horse crap, people crap. And all the time I'd thought about home, I hadn't thought once about the smell. It was 5:45 when I got to Aunt Lily and Aunt Sarah's building on Eldridge Street. I wish they weren't boarders. It was going to be bad enough telling them what had happened without the whole Cohen family hearing it too. The hallway seemed narrower and darker than I remembered. I climbed the stairs, hugging the carving and trying to make my teeth stop chattering. I had loused everything up. I should have waited for a day when the maid came right away. I should have just watched to see what happened, to see if it went the way Louis and Danny had said. I could have waited. There was no emergency. I knocked on the door. Who could that be? Mrs. Cohen opened the door. Dave, is that you? Dave Carroll? You're soaking wet. Come in. I went in, stood, dripping on the cracked linoleum in their kitchen. It was warm in here. I sneezed. Mrs. Cohen had been washing one of her boys in the wash tub next to the sink. There were soap suds in his hair, and he started crying. Aunt Sarah rushed to me from the front room. Dave, what happened? Aunt Lily was right behind her. You're drenched. Mr. Cohen and another son came out of the bedroom. The two little girls stood in the doorway to the front room. They all stared at me. Aunt Sarah hurried back into the room. I'll get a towel. Mrs. Cohen started rinsing the crying kid in the tub. It's all right, she crooned. The Cohen's apartment seemed tiny, but it was the same size as our old place. I didn't remember our apartment being so small. Where's your shoe? Sarah, he's missing a shoe. Aunt Sarah came back. I handed Papa's carving to her. Ah, phew, he's filthy. Get me a washcloth, Lily. Take your clothes off, Dave.
Okay.
I'll just be a minute. Mrs. Cohen got her kid out of the tub and I started washing myself at the sink. At the home, we had hot water. Mrs. Cohen shooed her daughters into the front room. We'll give you some privacy. Mr. Cohen and his sons went back into the bedroom. I was alone in the kitchen with Aunt Sarah and Aunt Lily, but it wasn't private. Everybody could hear everything. After I finished at the sink, Aunt Sarah washed my shirt. Aunt Lily brushed as much of the mud as she could off my jacket and knickers. Then she put something on the stove to heat. Aunt Sarah gave me 2 towels to wrap myself in and told me to sit at the table. In a few minutes, Aunt Lily handed me a bowl of hot spinach and bean soup. Aunt Sarah draped my clothes over the stove to dry. Where's Papa's carving? I asked. Well, I washed it too, Aunt Lily said, pointing. It was on the floor near the door, drying on newspapers. Dave, Aunt Sarah said, what did you do this time? I told them. They thought I should have gone into Mr. Doom's office, and they thought I should have stayed and apologized when I was caught. Neither of them believed me about the beating I would have gotten. They didn't even think Mr. Doom had been stealing when he took Papa's carving. He was just keeping us safe for you, Aunt Lily said. It's not as if you're a paying customer, Aunt Sarah added. When I finished my soup and some bread, Aunt Lily asked Aunt Sarah, can't he stay here tonight? I hate to go out again. From the front room, Mrs. Cohen called out, certainly he can stay tonight, no charge. But Aunt Sarah took my clothes off the stove. They probably called the police. We have to take him right away. I should have known better than to come here. I should have known they'd bring me back. Whew. Well, that was an exciting chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.